have. Can you go to the first slide? I just want to throw a couple just general thoughts out. Take just 10 minutes to say a few things before we engage in the conversation. Everybody who lives in the countries that you see on that map is actually an American. So we have come to, and certainly in the United States, we've come to think about Americans as U.S. citizens. Like we reserve Americans for that, or we use Americans for that, and many people around the world do as well. But in Latin America, historically, and still many people talk about Americanos as anybody who's in the Western Hemisphere is technically an Americano. So that means, North, Central, and South American, and the Caribbean. So we have a lot of terms that we throw around, but that's one. And so what we have in Spanish, we have this adjective, we have this term, estadounidense, which means United Statesian. And it's a term that you use when you're in Spanish for someone from the United States. But we don't have that in the U.S. And if we had that in the U.S., we would use it as a United Statesian, but we don't. But it does exist. And I think it has value to kind of step outside of things. I had a roommate from El Salvador back when I was in grad school, and he would always just say, people would ask him what he is, and he'd say, I'm an American. And they say, yeah, but you're not from the U.S. He'd be like, I know, but I'm an American. Soy americano. And people just really didn't comprehend that this is a term that has just come to be used by many people to reference people in the United States, but it hasn't always been that way. And it's not that way for everybody. Okay, so the next slide. So the other thing, I want to get to this term Caucasian, but before I get to the term Caucasian, I just kind of want to say a couple things about, when human beings, people started traveling around the world with a scientific understanding. Meaning that with science, what we want to do is we want to categorize the world. And we want to break it up into these tiny parts and explain causality. And so when people started traveling around the world, in particular on ships, it was, one of these ideas, when you're walking, most people in a given geographic region look very similar to one another. And so unless somebody migrates in from outside that region, and with very different physical features, they're largely going to look like everybody else. And so historically speaking, most people that most everybody throughout history encountered, most strangers, looked like they looked. Because, you're walking around and you're only going to get so far as to see other people who look like you look. But when people got on boats, and they started traveling to distant shores, you get off the boat and suddenly you see these people that look very, very different from you. And what that did for those who are more science-minded was spark them to try to categorize human groups in terms of their physical characteristics. And we later come to talk about that as races, right? So racial categorizations. And this Linnaeus was one of the first people to do that. And you see, he came up with 3 different groups. And of course, you know that this Linnaeus guy was European because you can see what he said about Europeans, right? People who were like him. Of course, you never are going to categorize people and make the proclamation that your people are the lowest form or whatever it is that's negative. You're going to elevate your own group and push down the qualities and characteristics of others. So there were really, he kind of put dark and red together. And then, of course, look what he says about people of African ancestry, right? Lazy, negligent, crafty. Anoints himself with grease. I'm not really sure how that fits. But this is, in the early to mid 18th century that we were starting to develop what would be seen as these kind of racist categories, meaning that certain groups of people are better than, for whatever reason, are better than other groups of people. Smarter, stronger, more efficient, more crafty, just overall in some characteristics, right? Well, other people moved on from this. So go to the next one. And so this guy, Blumenbach, came up with 5 categories of people. And this is, I think he did this in 1775 is when he published this. But note that white people were the Caucasoid people. So later come to be called Caucasians. And the term Caucasian, and I just always found this really interesting. His idea, these were people from the Caucasus region, which is this kind of strip of land between the Caucasus Mountains, between Russia and Georgia. And his idea, as I recall, if I recall correctly, was that he thought that of all the white people in the world, these were the best representation of whiteness because they were, he thought, the purest form and the most beautiful. And so he decided, hey, we're going to name, this is like the most elevated groups, and so we're going to name Caucasians after the people of this particular region. And that's where that word comes from, right? Which is kind of interesting because nobody uses that today, really. Except white people never use that. I almost never hear white people using that. And mostly brown people don't use it, but I do hear black people and black Americans often, and I hear some white people, I guess I do, but I hear, but not many people. Most white people don't. It's just like Caucasians, right? It's not a term that really is in fashion anymore. But it's kind of interesting to kind of think about where these things are and how we've evolved, right? And it's kind of funny. If I have this idea that if white people were minoritized and empowered as some kind of minority group, which many white people think that we are a minority group at this point. But if white people were more minoritized and empowered, I think white people would see this as a racist term. People would have shifted in the way. In the similar way that, a lot of black people see colored as a racist term. And colored never became identified as a racist term, but over the course of the past 15 or 20 years, it just really very much fell, probably 20 to 25, fell out of usage, right? You can say people of color, but you can't say colored people. And many people really identify that as racist, but it's never been racist. It's just that people don't know what to say about the term, other than, it's just kind of not used anymore. Kind of like Caucasoid, right? Caucasian. It's very similar, right? It's just say white. So instead of saying colored, you say black. But what's also really interesting is that for a lot of people that don't speak English, colored and people of color, really, it's the same word. Colored people, people of color. But if you say color, if I say colored people would be, especially black people, but, would be really upset. What are you using colored people for? But I hear people for whom English is not their first language often use this term. And it makes sense because people of color is really bulky. It makes no sense to say that. But colored people makes sense. That's how you learn English. Speaking English, you would say that. So anyway, I always find that really fascinating, these kinds of things. All right, Mom. The other thing about white people that I want to say as we before we jump into our conversation is that the other thing about white people is that white people only relatively recently became white. White people have been almost every single group, white European group, that came to the United States was seen in negative terms, in negative ways, by other European groups or groups or people that came from Europe before them. It's especially true of Southern Europeans and especially true of Catholics. And this is important because if you don't really understand your immigration history, then you can't really understand the relationships between people. That for most of the history of the United States, white Europeans were not in any way some unified category of people. So this is a cartoon from around the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. And what you see in this, in here, these are mostly depicting Italians. And Italians were being depicted as rats. Rats who are coming over to infest the United States. And so you see all of these cartoons aimed at the undesirables coming from Europe. The people here in the United States, the leaders and the people already here, didn't want to come. So this idea now that we're kind of slamming the door on immigrants coming to the United States. There are a lot of people who don't want other people to come for various parts of the world and for various reasons. That's always been happening in the United States. So it's like you accept immigration when it's beneficial to you, but even then, very often, it's very grudgingly. So Italians, seen in deeply negative terms. And next slide. Here's another cartoon showing the Irish. Irish were always depicted as apes. And showing the Irish in these negative terms. And so, people, look at that. It's quite amazing, right? And so, Italian, Irish, all these groups in a negative way. So we're going to talk about being an American. And we're going to talk about being white. But it's not, but in order to have the conversation, it really is important that we put some context behind this, that these are conversations that are constantly evolving and moving and going in different directions, and they will continue to do that. So we're going to just do that conversation today and see where it goes. Okay, so can we have you can go the first. Can we have the first folks, man? Christo, you guys. Yeah. Why don't all four of you come up? Yeah. Hey. Yeah, go ahead, man. Hey, yeah, go ahead. Do you want to sit on the table? Is there enough space for four of you? Or do you want to do chairs? What do you think? We got to do one or the other. See if you can sit on the table if you guys are comfortable. You got it? Dude, all right, man. Dude, and you guys can share the microphone. Dude, this is awesome. Are we good? All right, man. Okay, so can you? Why don't you introduce yourself, man?
My name is Adam. I'm a second-year biochem student. What else?
What's your ancestry?
Okay, so my mom's Syrian, my dad's Egyptian, and I was born in the U.S. I'm from an hour out of Philly.
But you've traveled, have lived a lot and traveled a lot, and
Yeah,
you're really
so
connected to those
every
cultures.
summer up until the pandemic, I'd go usually to Syria, and I've been to Egypt,
Yeah,
usually in the winters.
yeah. All right, man. Christophos.
My name is Christoforos. I'm an international student from Athens, Greece. I'm a sophomore finance major. Yeah.
My name is Clarissa McQuain. I'm a junior and I'm a forensic chem major, and my mom is Brazilian and my dad is American.
I'm Ayush Arora. I am a junior studying industrial engineering. I'm an international student as well. My dad is from North India. My mother is from the UK, and I went to a British Catholic school.
So listen, man. So I want you to talk mostly about the UK. Okay.
Yep.
So here's my first question to you all. Oh, wait. Wait, hang on. Hang on, man. Dude. You're not supposed to, I made a mistake. You can have a seat, bro. Yep. And it's going to be, hey, let me ask you this. It's all these people. Is there anybody in the class who's European who wants to join this conversation? Anyone who's European who feels like, oh, I could have something to say about this? Or anybody who feels like they could have something to say? We good? Nobody does? Okay, man.
It's all on me then.
Dude, it's all on you three. All right, so listen, man. Tell me this. How do people in your country, like people talk about themselves as white? We'll just start with you, like in Greece. Do people talk about themselves as white?
What do you mean exactly? I mean, so like Greece, from my experience, is a pretty white country, I guess, because our ancestry is white.
But what's that mean? Like, what's it mean to you?
I mean, it's what you make of it, I guess, but it's like a part of our, I guess, ethnicity. Ethnicity is a nice word, by the way. It's a Greek word meaning ethnos, which is like country or people. And I guess being white is a part of the Greek ethnicity in most cases. Not to say that they're not, I guess, Greeks that are not white.
Yeah, but right, exactly. But do white Greeks talk about themselves as being white?
I mean, it's, as I said, something that defines us, but it's like we take it as a given, for example. Like, we're white, like, it's the same goes with Americans. Do white Americans behave differently because they're white?
Well, this is a question, right? So here in the United States, whiteness, if you have this conversation with white Americans up here, whiteness is a thing that now, I mean, I don't think most white people aren't looking in a mirror, and when you look in a mirror, you see a white, you think like, oh, I'm white. White becomes this thing that they kind of, in a way, take for granted. But I'm wondering if that's true, how true that is in Greece.
I guess I haven't really been able to meet a lot of people that are not white in Greece, but I mean, I've traveled around the world and I'm here now, so I've met people that are not, I guess, white. But like coming back to Greece, it's more of like what's common in terms of like, given that the ethnicities. I haven't like seen like a difference, or I think that it's like something really definitive, like that that makes a difference. I guess.
Okay. All right. Okay. I got it.
Like it's not that we have some opinions or some, let's say, like our culture is not because we are white. It's because we have all this history throughout the years that with the philosophers and stuff that it doesn't really, I guess, it's because we're white.
Okay. So here's one final question, and then we're going to move on. We'll come back to you. Are you more white than European, or more European than white?
I don't think I'm something more. I'm Greek, I'm European, I'm white.
Okay, all right. So for you, it's like it's all there.
Yes. But but the thing that first comes in mind is, I guess, Greek.
Yeah. Okay. Clarissa. So how about you? Like in Brazil, right? So we're gonna step outside of Europe a little bit, but white Brazilians came from Europe. So like, how is whiteness talked about in Brazil?
I don't really know exactly like how they feel about being white per se. I traveled to Brazil. I've never lived in Brazil, but I go and visit. Usually, like, people think of Brazilians and think like, oh, they're darker, they're tanner. But there are some white Brazilians. Like, my family is white. I'm pretty sure they see themselves as white.
People use the term white.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I think. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So your family's white.
Yeah.
They see themselves as white.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. So what are some of like the politics of whiteness there that are different than the politics of whiteness here? Like, what are some politics of whiteness? Like, whiteness is like whiteness. It's like a term that, like, whoa, okay. Is it like that, or is it just a given?
I think it's just a given. Like it's kind of normal. Like you're just gonna have like a mix of people who are white and who are a bit more tan. Like I think it's
Uh-huh.
just more normal.
Like, so in Brazil, you got a ton of racial categories,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like on
Yeah.
the census, there's
Yeah.
like 60 or so. Are there multiple categories of whiteness that people use, or is it not?
I don't really think so. I think it's just you're either white or you're something else. Like
Got you.
Yeah.
And do you see yourself as being here? How does being here in the United States impact that for you? How you see yourself? Like, go ahead.
Okay, so I see myself as white, but a lot of my friends, like I am a bit darker than my friends.
Uh-huh.
So I see myself as white, but they're like, oh, you're not white, like you're Brazilian. Like you look Brazilian. So
Do you think you look Brazilian?
I don't think I do.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think you do.
Yeah.
Are
no.
these friends who have been to Brazil? Are these
No.
Brazilian friends?
No, these are American friends.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things that people like
Mhm.
really,
Yeah.
they play with.
Yeah.
Right? This is the ethnicity term that you
Yeah.
said. Once we sort of grab ethnicity, we make a link to physical characteristics. So you look Brazilian, so like people would think that. But if you've been to Brazil, you wouldn't necessarily think that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So do you feel, hang on, I had a question that I was really just pondering about this politics of whiteness here. How is it like this movement, the Black Lives Matter movement here was also a movement in Brazil. So has that shaped any way in which you think about your whiteness?
Not really. I think maybe for some people it could shift like
Uh-huh.
how they think about themselves, but for me, I don't think it did.
Uh-huh. And so here in the United States, people talk about whiteness being a privilege.
Yeah.
But in Brazil, whiteness is really a privilege,
Mhm.
right? So how do you make a distinction there? Like, how do you see that? Do you think about it? Do you see it? Like, not that you have to. I'm just wondering if you do.
Yeah, I don't really know. I've never really seen it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Okay, Ayush, how'd I do with your name?
You did all right.
I did all right?
Yeah.
Ayush.
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 Yeah.
Did-
Ayush, like a little bit lighter on the U.
All right. So tell me about whiteness. Like, what's your experience of whiteness in the UK as a brown guy?
In my experience, it's never really mattered that much. It's like it depends on more where you're, not necessarily if you're white or if you're brown. It's more about, like for instance, we classify people as more of their country. So either you're British or you're not British.
Uh-huh.
Like more kind of like that at the end of the day, or say like at the end of the day, either you're Asian or you're not Asian, you're British or you're not British. It doesn't really matter where your skin tone is that much.
So how does that experience of being there and like understanding race there, or having the experience of race there, how does that affect how your experience of race here? Like your experience of whiteness there in the UK, how does it impact your experience here?
I feel like in the US, it's a bigger conversation. People tend to talk about it a little bit more than
Uh-huh.
in the UK. For instance, in the UK, like no one really. For instance, if I tell people in the US, like, hey, yeah, my mother's British, I'm from the UK, for instance, they would say like, oh, wow, you don't look very British. Like that's not a conversation I'd be having back home necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think people in the US are very curious, which is never a bad thing. But it's just a different conversation in the US than it is anywhere else, I would say.
So do you think it's more of a conversation here? Like, is it
Absolutely, absolutely.
like more politicized, more?
I feel like it matters a bit more here in the US. And
Yeah.
like not in a bad sense in any way. It's more about people are just trying to get to know you more
Yeah.
than anything else. And I feel like a lot of people talk about the stiff upper lip. That's very true back
Yeah.
home.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Stiff upper lip back in the UK.
Yeah, like we don't really talk about that much. It doesn't really matter
Yeah.
for that fact.
Right. Like a lot of things are just kept hidden behind.
Yeah, and like a lot of things, not just how you look, a lot of things outside of that.
Yeah. So what do you know about white Americans? And you could maybe weigh in, one of you could weigh in on this too. Like, what have you seen about white Americans that's kind of unique?
Very expressive.
White Americans?
Very expressive. Like,
Yeah? What do you
yeah.
mean?
For instance, when I landed here in the U.S., so I'm an international student, as I said, and like my first time living, I'd been to the U.S. before. Like living here was when I came to Penn State freshman year.
Yeah.
Like everyone's just talking too much. Hey, how was your day? And a lot of stuff like that. And I'm like, how do I know if you're a friend of mine? Because that's how I would talk back home to a very close friend.
Yeah.
And people I'm like meeting in the hallway are talking to me like that. So I went to my RA and I'm like, what's going on? Like, why is everyone talking to me so much? But even like if you go to buy a coffee, like, hey, how was your day? Hey, have a good day. For us, it's really not that common to have a conversation like that. And even like in a more interpersonal conversation with a friend, you talk about yourself, significantly more. You're just so much more expressive. Like things I would never necessarily talk about my friends back home. It's just such a normal conversation here.
But you think that's your experience? This is just your experience, right?
Yeah.
Is it uniquely? You're saying this about white people, not Americans in general, but mostly white Americans?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's hard to generalize, but in my experience, I would say yes.
Yeah. Christofos, well, how about
Yes.
you? Like, what have you learned about white people being here?
I guess that white American and black American are like all Americans in a sense. And they might express some different, I guess, cultural identities, given that they have different history. And like connecting to the class, which one was it, about the Black Devils that we watched online, like class 9, we could say that black and white Americans were in the different, I guess, parts of history. Like the ones were the slaves, and the white mostly were the ones that like implemented, I guess, the idea of that. But I wanted to add something else, which I think it could be judged interesting in this topic. So like, I guess most of us in this class and in the panel would agree that, I guess, Greece, Brazil, UK, the United States are fairly democratic countries. And a representation of like democracies are like political system, in its country, of course. And where I'm going with this is, for example, we have the Greek parliament, where there are like 300, I guess, responsible people that kind of like represent the people of Greece. And the same goes here from Congress. And I want to say that like in Congress, there's a pretty good mix with black and white Americans and I guess Asian Americans. But in Greece, coming back, there like the vast majority of the politicians are white, which says something about like which racial groups are in Greece. And
Says
in
something
the
about-
America,
yeah. Huh. So what? Go back to this
Because
question.
even like in the UK example, like I guess you're Indian, right? And like UK Prime Minister is Indian. So like it's more common to I guess the other countries to be more multiracial, like comparing with Greece, I guess.
Yeah.
Like-
So you're really white. So you really are white.
It's the
Okay,
ethnos, the Greek like ethnos.
Yeah, I
is-
got you. So
Yeah.
here's a quick. I want to go back to this question. So people here. So the three of you could weigh in on this too. So what I hear from a lot of black and brown people often is like they often see themselves as not even like Americans. Like you have Americans, and Americans are white Americans, and then you have all these, some do. I mean, obviously, I have tons of folks that are just like, no, we're American, man. But there's so many people that kind of almost remove themselves from American culture in some way because they feel like, in a way the culture has removed them from the culture, right? But what you're saying is like, no, dude, like you're American. Like do one of you can you weigh in on that? Because I see this a lot. Like when I'm traveling and I run into Americans who are not white. And so often it's just like, damn, man, you are so American. And I talk to them, and I know if we were back in the United States, they would say, oh, but I'm not really American because I'm somehow just set apart. And I'm like, man, you are so damn American. You're more American than I'm American, even though you have black skin or brown skin or something, right?
I would say as a non-American, I feel the opposite way. Like if someone, for instance, if I meet a person who's brown in skin color from Philadelphia and they're like, oh yeah, I'm a big Eagles fan, I would like, yeah, you're definitely American. Like it wouldn't necessarily cross my mind.
It wouldn't cross your mind.
Yeah, it wouldn't even, like for me, since I'm not American, like I would always think of them as an American.
Yeah, Americans are Americans. Yeah, you're right. So the idea, though, is a lot of Americans of color will often sort of almost separate themselves and not see like, well, America, just these comments like, oh, America it's my country, but it's not really my country, but America doesn't want me, or I don't really belong here. All these kinds of things that people say. And I'm like, damn, man, you are so American that you don't really understand that, too. And then, Clarissa, I want to see if you want to weigh in on this. But go ahead, bro.
Just a note here. I think that we have to also segregate, in a sense, the difference between being an American and being an American citizen. Because like Americans also may be considered that they have the culture of an American of like Americans, while an American citizen may not have like the same culture, for example.
Yeah, got you.
Like for example, let's say an international student here from Korea gets suddenly the American passport. Is he American? I mean, it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah. I got that. Hey, Clarissa, I have a question for you. What makes, in your mind, like, what makes somebody white?
I think that someone's white if they have, if they have ancestry from a country that produces predominantly white people. Yeah, that's kind of it.
But what they look like? Does that, like, what's whiteness? Because what about like this guy who doesn't look white, but dude, you could be white easily. I mean, you're just white. You could be here and you could just become white like that. Like he could just blend in with it. Could you look brown but actually be white?
Yeah, like I think I'm not gonna say that someone's white just because of what they look like.
Yeah.
A lot, if you say you're white and you're a different color, I'm gonna believe you. Like you can be white, like you're white. But I think your actions can also like come into play, like just certain things that groups of people do.
Got you. So going back to you, so you're from Brazil. So when we talk about black people and brown people, Brazil is a brown country. This is like what we use, right? So black people, brown people, white people, right? I mean, it's just this thing. We build these categories. Brazil is considered a country of a Latin American country, not a Hispanic country, but a Latin American country, meaning like you have minority status here in the United States. You are a minority, but you're like really pretty white.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that as a white person who's a minority?
I think like when I apply to things, like when I apply to college or like a job or something, I put down like I am a minority and I say things like that on government documents.
Yeah.
I won't do anything like in terms of actions that will make other people know that I am a minority. Like I won't say, oh, I'm a minority, like you can't treat me like that or something like that. I won't do that.
No, but demographically speaking, you have to put you have to put your Latino. If they say, are you white, are you black, are you Latino, you got to put Latino, which immediately puts you in minority category.
Yeah, but I won't I wouldn't purposefully use it
Got you.
to like make me get something.
Yeah, I got you.
Like,
To give you something.
yeah.
But, yeah, but, right, but this is so what do you think? Should she say she's white or should she say she's Latino?
I guess it's really up to her, and I feel like if she has the heritage, then there's nothing wrong with saying that she is, for instance, from a minority community. But on the other hand, you also don't want to necessarily self-segregate.
But listen, but she's not saying that she's really, I mean, you said that in the way that you said it, but that's not really what you're saying. You're putting on the document that I am Latino. And other people claim that as minority status, right? But the issue is that you're not saying I'm a minority, you're saying I'm Latina. And the rest of us say like, okay, that means you're a minority. So my question is then, but look at her, dude. She's as white as you get. She's whiter than Christofos here, I think, right? What do you think, bro? Is she whiter than you?
I think she looks pretty white to me.
Okay. So therefore, should she say, what's your ancestry? Should she say, okay, I look in a mirror, all right, I'm white. Or should she say, no, I'm Latina? She is Latina, and she's white.
Well, you could always say other than say both.
Yeah.
But I guess it's really up to her and how she identifies more. If she feels more connected with Latin heritage.
Okay, dude, how do you identify more, as a Latina or as a white person? As Brazilian or as a white person?
I identify more as Brazilian.
Okay, so therefore you're Latina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if there's like an option for me to put like check 2 or more or like
You would-
whatever applies, I would check both.
Yeah, I got you.
Like-
I got you. So this is a really interesting question, right? Like, how do we do that? We've created this world in which we have decided that we're going to put these categories in place, and then we're going to force people into them. And I think you should put Latina, like that's what you should use. But at the same time, it's like it's very complicated because this race stuff is highly politicized, and so it's like, whoa, damn, man, bro. Wait, hang on. Do you have a question? What is whiteness? Yeah, what's whiteness?
What's whiteness? I don't really get the ness part of it. I think it could be seen by various perspectives of what could be considered whiteness. The one could be like the stereotypical behavior of someone that is judged to be white. And
Dude, do you engage in that behavior? You're white, so do you?
I'm white, but like I don't.
What do you do that we know you're white? What do you do?
Nothing. It's just like my skin, because I think that it all comes down like to like I guess the skin.
Okay.
There's not really the behavior of. I don't think that we could judge a person because he's white. He does that.
Yeah,
for
I got
example.
you. I got you.
I was just saying the stereotypical bias that someone may have in mind.
No, I got you. I got you. That's
Concerned
cool.
to the whiteness.
Dude, what's whiteness?
I agree with everything that he said. I feel like at the end of the day, it's about skin color. And you can even say you're from Northern Africa, right? And you have a really...
But it's not just skin color, right? Because we've decided she's on a category, she's Latina. That means if there's only choose one, she's not white, she's Latina. And whenever you say Latina, dude, is Latina a brown person or a white person? They're going to be brown. So, that means she's not white. So what's whiteness?
I got no good answer here.
Okay, it's a question, right? I don't have an answer either. I'm not sure what whiteness is.
Can I ask you something? Like, is Latina, for this purpose of this discussion, considered an ethnicity or a race?
Considered ethnicity.
Ethnicity.
Yeah.
But like white is considered a race.
Yeah, exactly. This is
So
why it's really weird.
it's-
Whenever you see...
So it could be both, because race, like my race is white, my ethnicity is like
Yeah, but we don't
Latino.
ask that. So we
Oh.
ask okay, what are you? And then we'll be like, white, black,
Okay.
Asian,
Close-ended
Asian
questions, yeah.
Pacific Islander, Native American, Hispanic, white, non-Hispanic, or Hispanic, or
Got it.
Latino. Hispanic is someone who derives their ancestry from Spain, but that's not
Okay.
you. You're Brazilian, so you come from Portugal. So it becomes really complicated. So the answer to the stream, by the way, I don't know what whiteness is. I have no idea. I know it when I see it sometimes, but oftentimes I don't. Yeah. Dudes, okay, that's it. That's it.
Thank you very
Awesome,
much, I
man.
guess.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
man.
Thank you.
You can leave that up. All right, thanks, man. Yeah. You guys rocked. Okay. Hey, wait, you're up? Adam. You're up, man. Amelia, wait. Where's Amelia? Okay. Hey, and anybody else could, if you want to add something to this, you can add something to this. Can you say who you are and what you... Wait, oh yeah, Diego. Dude, you're up. Sorry about that. Just say for what your background is.
All right. I'm Adam. I'm half Syrian, half Egyptian. Born in the U.S.
And you spent a lot of time in Syria and in Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
My name's Liliana. I'm a senior in biotech, and I'm half Palestinian, half American.
And you spent a lot of time, your family's from...
I was born in Amman, Jordan, and we visit when we can, but I was raised mostly in the U.S.
I'm Amelia. I'm a third-year chemistry major. I'm from New York, and I'm Croatian.
Croatian. Got it.
I'm Diego. I'm studying biology. Both my parents are immigrants from Spain, and I spend most of my summers there.
So here's a question for you all, right? What makes someone an American? Like, what do you all see from your experience of being outside the U.S., being here in the U.S.? When do you know that you've encountered an American? Anybody can go on this. Yeah. Do you want to go? Go ahead, bro.
I feel like it's hard to tell, but I think culturally, like even just looking, like if you're in Europe, I feel like the Americans can get spotted out really easily.
Yeah.
Just by
What do
how
you
they
see?
dress.
What do you? Because I agree with you. I feel the same way when I'm in Europe. In fact, I'm going to be in Europe tomorrow. What is that? What do you see?
I think it really depends about what country you're in. Like I was in Copenhagen this summer, and the Danes, I feel like, dressed pretty nice, posh, like. But then an American, as soon as like somebody had shorts on, they're already like flagged, like as an American. So and just I don't know how they walk, and the Danes were really reserved.
Hold the mic really
Sorry,
close.
the Danes were really like reserved as people as well, and the Americans would be very outward, speaking with others. And stuff.
So it goes with what Ayush said.
Yeah,
Ayush.
but I'm not sure that's the same. I think
But that's your experience of it. I would say it's similar. No, it's good. Thanks, dude. That's cool.
Having grown up in New York City, I feel like I didn't experience like your typical American until I actually came to Penn State. This was like the place where I saw like the most like white Americans as like one would imagine it. I generally find Americans to be like louder and more, not outgoing necessarily, but like they're very noticeable. Like Americans wear like big brands. Like you're right. Like when you go to Europe, you can tell exactly who's American because they have on their sneakers with the brands and like Adidas pants or they're Russian. But
So like in Croatia,
yeah,
is that what you see?
you can tell a lot. I'm from a part of Croatia that doesn't necessarily get as many tourists because I'm not from the like really pretty part. I'm from like the capital. But like when you're on the coast, which is where most people go, it's very. Like you can tell when an American tourist is there, they leave tips. It's just like they treat, like they assume that everyone else will just be American as well. They speak English. Like granted, most people in Europe do speak English at this point, but they'll just assume that everyone else will just cater to their Americanness.
Or just speak English? Because
Yeah, exactly.
if you don't know a language, I
Yeah.
do this in Korea, right? I mean, I just start speaking English because I'm like, I mean, in lots of places I do because I'm like, well, unless I'm in a Spanish-speaking country, then I speak Spanish. Would you agree with that? That idea of like just...
I think it depends on what country you're in. Like in Denmark, I also went to Iceland. I would speak English immediately,
Yeah.
but in country such as France, I would try a little bit,
Yeah.
just because I don't think they were as English speaking. And Spain as well. Spain,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I encounter a lot less
People
people who
speaking
speak
English.
English. So I, of course, would speak Spanish. My friends would try in Spanish as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah.
So I think it's really dependent.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm with you on that. How about you? Like, what tips you off about what makes someone an American from what you see? And thinking about your life in Jordan.
Yeah, so in my family, being an American really just means to have citizenship. I think that there's no there's stereotypes of being American, but like my grandma who was raised in Palestine, my dad who was raised in Jordan, the second they got their citizenships, they're American. And
Meaning they just claimed it?
yes, they identify as American.
Yep, yep.
And so I don't think you can necessarily tell who's American or not because you don't know their life story and if they identify that way or not.
So I wonder if that's part of this American thing of so many immigrants to the U.S., right? With citizenship, it matters. It matters so much. The people who want citizenship and get citizenship and really embrace that in some kind of way. That seems like it's in some strange way a uniquely American thing or something.
Yeah, the only time I saw my dad cry was the day he got his citizenship.
Yeah? It's so wild. Bro, how about you, man? What makes someone an American?
So I'm going to speak mostly on my time in Syria because that's where, I guess I identify more as Syrian than Egyptian. But you can tell on the way that people, speak. If they speak English, everyone's going to come to you and be like, talk English to me because everyone wants to learn English. But also, the way that people dress, the way people talk, the way that they just, act in general, you can tell.
What's the act in general? What do you mean? Because I have a lot of experiences of this that
I think the way that Americans act is much more outgoing, I'd say.
So it's
And-
again what he said earlier.
Yeah, and much less self-aware too.
Much less self-aware. What do you
they're
mean by
louder,
that?
They're, yeah, I mean,
You're shaking your head on that. Do you agree with it? What do you agree with?
I mean, I just think that from my time having been in Europe, if there's someone yelling, if there's someone being annoying, most likely they are American because it's just we're louder here, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree that Americans are abnormally loud outside of the U.S. for some reason.
Yeah. What else do you see? That's really fascinating, actually. Yeah. I mean, it's a stereotype, right? But it's a stereotype that I hear over and over, and I have witnessed it in all of my travels, throughout my life, the last 40 years, And sometimes me, I'm the loud American. I'm the obnoxious American. And sometimes I just really embrace that because I'm I'm an American, man, so just be an American. It's okay. It's all good.
I think that's it. I think that's all I have. But
When, so what do you see as I'm going to stick with you. So as a dual national, what's something you see about the U.S. that other people might not see if they haven't really left the U.S.?
I think just being cultured is a big thing. It follows what I was saying before about being loud and things like that. I feel that's a big thing. And also I feel there's a connection between people who have been able to or who aren't American, white people.
Or all people, just white people, or all people?
I mean, I guess just American.
I mean, there's this. So I'm thinking about Syria, for
Yeah.
example, right? And I'm thinking about, or Egypt, and I'm thinking about, you know, the ethnic groups in Syria, the ethnic groups in Egypt, and I think here in the United States, we are this vastly complex multicultural society, right? And how is that? Like how,
I think in Syria, people are much more like willing and able to live with each other and be peaceful to one another in comparison to here.
which is surprising given the Civil War, but it doesn't matter because that's the Civil War up here, but you're talking day to day. There
Yeah.
is a way in which, yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, this goes to like the Arab world piece a little bit, yeah. That's really interesting though, that people are, even in a country that is now mired in this, you know, almost 10-year civil war, there's, you know, with like 4.5 or 5 million refugees out of Syria, right? And yet what you're saying is like people are able to somehow live together more easily than here in the United States.
I think it's very rare to see conflict like between citizens
Yeah.
there in comparison to here. It's something you see like daily here.
Dude,
and
it's
never
so,
there.
yeah, it's so interesting, right? Yeah, and we don't see that much really here either. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, look at this room and stuff, but still. How about, what would you say to that? What was my question? Like, as a, like a dual, like, what do you see about America, about this country that other people wouldn't necessarily see?
I think America, kind of going off what he said, is a lot more individual based. And so that allows you to like have more freedom in who you are.
Yeah.
But then like looking at Jordan and other Middle East countries that are very community based,
Yeah.
there's a strong support network and stuff, but I feel like there's also like more societal norms almost of ways to act versus America. It's more free. You can act however you want.
Yeah, so there's this like this moral order, this way of assessing what's right and what's wrong, like what's good and what's bad, right? Our ethics, our morality, and how we think about those things, and we're all you know, we are assessing right and wrong with everything we do all day long, and so there's a moral order can be more communitarian based, meaning like before I make decisions, before I act in some way, I'm going to look out around the people around me and decide, hey, what are they doing? What are they thinking? Or I'm going to just decide, well, what do I want to do? It doesn't matter what they want to do. It's just going to be what I want to do. And so what you're saying is like, yeah, you got these cultures that are more community-oriented or communitarian-oriented. And so people naturally have an instinctual way of looking at other people before they think about themselves. Do you have anything to, do either of you have anything to add to that? Like this,
I agree with what you said. I was just gonna I think the silliest example is just like table manners.
Yeah.
It was so emphasized growing up, like how I should hold my fork, how I should hold my knife. And then I came here in the dining halls and I was like, whoa, they're like grabbing their fork like this, the knife is like this. It's like, I don't know what's going on, but it does, like they don't care.
It
And
all
I think
works.
that's also like a good thing too.
Yeah.
But it's different.
Yeah.
Compared if like my grandma saw that, I'd
So
hit
what,
me.
yeah, and I think that's also, like, that's not just a your family thing, that's a Spanish thing, actually.
Yeah.
And what do people, what do you know, what do the four of you know about the United States that people who haven't traveled to the United States not know? So people in Croatia, Spain, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, what do you know being here that they don't know? What do you see that they don't see? The stereotypes they have that you really are like, nah.
I think a lot of Europeans really glorify it. Like a lot of Europeans I interacted with, especially this summer in Denmark, were like, "Oh, this America's like great," but then they also are like,
They also critique it.
They're like, I was just talking to some kids at a park, and they're like, "Aren't you afraid of getting shot every day?" And they're like, "People are getting shot all the time." And I was like, I don't even know how to respond to that. But
Okay.
I think they have their impression of America is like really drastic. Like
Okay,
everything's-
right. So it's like you watch the news and you
Yeah.
think that we have mass shootings going on every day. And we do, of course, have
Yeah.
shootings going on every day, but it's not but when you're here, it's not
like something
that.
I think about, and it's
Okay.
something that they're like, oh, when you go to school, like how, like, are you afraid and stuff?
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
So we have the same thing when we're thinking about like Syria or Jordan or any
I
number of
agree
places.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah, that's cool. I like. Anyone else have something you would add to that? And then I'm gonna.
I think the way that Syrians think about the U.S. is much different than like Spain, but they see it as like the ultimate goal, I guess. Like all Syrians want to go to the U.S. and I think something that they don't know is that it's not what it used to be, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like I already made up my mind. Like after I get my degree and start my career, I'll definitely want to leave the U.S.
Because you have that option, or like your orientation is around in the world. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's not as welcoming, I'd say, as it used to be. The U.S.
Or it doesn't. Okay. Well, it doesn't. It's not necessarily. You could say it's not necessarily as welcoming as a lot of other people imagine it to be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something. Do the two of you have anything you would add? Like, what's a stereotype? What's something that people think in Croatia, but you're like, nah, that's not necessarily how it is.
Well, I actually have the opposite of what they don't expect to be here. I feel like a lot of Europeans, not even Croatians specifically, aren't ready for the sheer amount of patriotism Americans show.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
flags everywhere. Americans wear shorts with the American flag on it. That's not a thing. You would never catch a single genuine Croatian citizen walking around.
Except
in,
unless they're
except
going
at the World
to
Cup.
a
That's
game.
the difference. I feel
Yeah.
like Croatians have a lot of pride when it comes to sports. We have our national team. I mean, after the World Cup, there's riots in the streets
yeah.
for both of the past two of them, versus the patriotism that the U.S. shows is very different. We don't have a national soccer. I mean, we have a national soccer team, but
Yeah.
it's not as unified as it would
Yeah,
be
got you.
the entire country in Croatia.
Yeah.
When we have the World Cup, it's the entire country watches it. Here,
Yeah.
it's I feel most people who watch the World Cup are connected to their
Yeah.
non-American ancestry.
Yeah, well, I think that just the first thing you said about being just the patriotism, the level of patriotism in the United States is really profound.
Being that's I think what you asked earlier, being American. I feel that's a big part of how I categorize it, is just
Yeah.
that not obsession with the U.S., but
Yeah.
it's much more me being Croatian is just I have brown hair. I'm Croatian.
Yeah,
This is just a
I got
fact
you.
about
But
me.
right. There's almost this kind of obsession with loving the country in this weird way. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah. Final. That's cool. Yeah, it's bizarre to me, but Yeah. Do you have a final thought? What you see that?
So I kind of agree with him. I think that, all of my extended family, except for my third cousin, my dad's third cousin, is in the U.S. now or in Canada. And so I think the ultimate goal is for a lot of the people I know in the Middle East to come to America. But at the same time, they kind of shit on Americans.
Yeah.
They're don't act American.
Yeah. So
So-
people love it, but they take, especially Europeans, man, they take this opportunity to put it down, but love it at the same time, which is really kind of odd in a way, but yeah. Dude. Yeah, okay, awesome, man. Yo, thanks. That's it. Cool, thanks. Dude, nice job, man. Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, y'all. Yeah, you can leave. Yo, very cool. Hey, so we have 8 minutes left, and I just want to take the opportunity to answer a couple questions that you might have for me. Can you?
So my idea was, where did this term of whiteness kind of come from in America? Because my grandmother came here, well, actually she was born here, to two
Yeah.
off-the-boat Italians. And they were less than welcoming when she was born and to her
Yeah.
family. And my thought is, I've always been told that I'm Italian, that I'm Slovak, I'm a sum of my parts.
Yeah.
And I always kind of kept that with my family, but along with like my friends that are like Korean or black in America, I'm white to them, and then to my friends that are international, I'm American. So from when did like me being Italian come up to being, oh, I'm white?
So in the first part of the 20th century, and once all of the different, once the different like ethnic enclaves, like Pittsburgh was, Italians and Irish, like the enclaves, right? Once people started to integrate more, once the big, hang on. I'm going to start answering it this way. Most immigration to the United States happened in waves. So lots of people from Italy, lots of people from Ireland, lots of people from Germany, people from different regions, the Russians, the Slovaks, right? And when they come in waves, they come with other relatives, or they move in with other relatives. They are in the communities, and so these communities start up. So like in the 1900s in New York City, there were hundreds of foreign language newspapers, all from all over the world, because all these people came from different parts of the world and they all lived together. The Syrians, for example, big migration from Syria that happened 50 years ago, and everybody lived together. And so at that point in time, everybody sort of maintains their identity as like, I'm Syrian or Lebanese or whatever it would be. But once all that immigration stopped in that same kind of way, which is the early part of the 20th century, the mid-20th century, then people just start to integrate, and at that point in time, whiteness starts to emerge as a category. And then in the civil rights movement, the whiteness really became the category because it became like black and brown people and white people over here. And so I would say that, And now we just talk whiteness. Now it's just this political term that we use. Yeah. How's that for an answer, bro? All right, man.
Sorry, yeah. Just that. When we were talking about whiteness, ever since coming to the US, I've been hearing this really interesting term that people use, and they say that some people are white passing.
White passing.
So
That
to
would be
me-
Clarissa.
Yeah, to me, when an American talks about being white, it's less about the skin color, and it's more about the culture and the behavior that is associated with a person who categorizes as white. So I'm just curious, when an American considers someone as white passing, where does the term even come from? And
Well,
what
listen,
is it that
yeah.
sort of like categorizes you as white passing or not? Is it biology or is it culture and behavior?
Yeah, it's mostly white passing emerged in the black community in slavery, and especially post-slavery and Reconstruction, in the time when slaves, the ideal would be to be light-skinned enough that you could pass as someone who's white. And so once you're not categorized as a slave, then you're categorized as white, and people would pass as like Italian or Southern European in some way, right? Black people who could pass as being Southern European, and they weren't seen as black. And so white passing emerged out of the black post-slavery experience. And then now it's mostly used and it's continued to be used in the black community. Yeah, I will say. White people don't think about that. Hey, by the way, where's Doe? Is there another question? Bro, you got a question?
Yeah. You're well traveled, right?
I'm traveled enough.
Okay. It's not as serious of a question, but like, where's the best place you've ever eaten?
Best place I've ever eaten?
Yeah, I'm a foodie. I gotta find out.
Dude, man. In a little?
Like, of all time.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go find that restaurant.
Dude, it was at Maria's restaurant in the in the mountains in Oaxaca, Mexico. I got off a bus.
How do you spell that city?
It was called San Jose del Pacifico, but you'll never find it because it's not on a map. And so I got off a bus in search for mushrooms. All right? And I was above the clouds, and I was told to go to Maria's restaurant. there was no Maria's restaurant, but I found Maria, and she was in her house, which was the size of maybe that screen and maybe a little larger. And I sat down with Maria, and she was a campesina woman in the highlands of Mexico. And she said, "Gringo, are you hungry?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm hungry." So she told her granddaughter to go get a chicken. Her granddaughter chased a chicken around, caught the chicken, broke its neck. She plucked the chicken, made chicken soup right there. It took about 2 hours as she sat on the ground tending this fire. And I had chicken soup that went from the chicken running around to my stomach, right? And then I left, and the neighbor says, she said, "Do you want chicken? Are you hungry? You want chicken soup?" I'm like, "Yeah." The neighbor says, "Quieres hongos? Do you want mushrooms?" And these are magic mushrooms. And I'm like, "That's why I'm here, man." So he goes into the forest and gets some mushrooms, comes back in a banana leaf with some mushrooms, says, "Here, take this many." And so I took that many, and 3 hours later, I met God. And I thought God was the chicken in the chicken soup. But it turns out God was a being that came to me from the mushrooms. And those were the 2 best meals I've ever had in my life. Yeah. So how about that?
Thank you.
All right, man. Hey, so have a good weekend.